Welcome to this screencast on social construction theory. This presentation is based on content from Chapter 1 in Malcolm Payne's Modern Social Work Theory textbook. The theory of social constructionism originates from sociology, and the theory suggests that meaning and knowledge are actually social constructs. They're constructed through the interactions between and among people, so that our cognitions, our human development, what we know and how we know it arises from our social context and from the interactions with those around us. Social construction is an important concept for us as social workers because we need to understand our clients' reality, how they see the world, how they make meaning to what happens to them, and the things that they find important and significant in their lives. So a major focus of social constructionism is about uncovering or deconstructing the ways in which individuals and groups participate in how they build their knowledge about reality and about their lives. It's about understanding how do people perceive the world around them. Social constructionism involves looking at the ways that social phenomena are developed, institutionalized, how they're known, and how they're made into traditions, into cultural norms, into significant parts of our society. All of this derives from human interactions. A socially constructed reality is one that is seen as an ongoing dynamic process, meaning that it is constantly evolving and changing, and that is reproduced by people acting on their interpretation and their knowledge of what their reality is. This may sound a little bit abstract, it may sound a little bit complicated, but the basic ideas is that we as humans are in a process of constantly building what we know, how we know it, and how we make meaning of what is happening around us and in our relationships. So, in other words, what we perceive as our social reality, what we call reality, is actually based on social knowledge that has been agreed upon between people, and that is based on our shared views of the world and our specific circumstances or our specific social context. For example, social norms are social constructions based on what is commonly expected, approved, and accepted in our society. We know that diverse cultures have differing norms, differing social traditions, and differing ideas about what is accepted and what is normal behavior. So our ideas and assumptions about how things should be are accepted as true because of the social activity with those around us that becomes internalized and that become habitual in our world. An example of social construct is the concept of money and the concept of currency. We in our society have agreed to give money meaning, to give it a value, and to give it importance. When you think about money, it's only pieces of paper, pieces of metal that represent something about what we value, something about how we use it, and how we come to expect the meaning of money. So money is a social construct, and if you think about if you're in another culture, if you're in another situation, the meaning of money may change. based on whether you have a lot of it or you don't have enough of it. Money may represent independence, freedom, options, choices to do what you want, or money may represent being able to buy those basic necessities, such as food, paying rent, buying clothing. Another example of social construct is the meaning that we make of gender and how our gender is socialized and created through social norms and expectations and cultural acceptance. So, for example, men, women, children, we all learn about the expectations that are associated with our gender based on the approval and validation that we get as children, based on the kinds of toys that we were given to play with, based on the colors that we were dressed in, whether pink or blue, whether we played with trucks or dolls. All of these contribute to the social norms about what is expected as a woman, what is expected as a man. Sometimes we talk about this as gender performance, that we actually perform the social norms about being a woman or being a man. So every time gender is reinforced when the associated behaviors are met with approval or disapproval from our parents, from our family members, from our teachers, and including from the media. So the social construction of gender starts in infancy. It starts when we're brought home from the hospital. How is that nursery decorated? What are the clothing and the colors of that clothing that the child is dressed in? Is the child dressed with a bow in its hair or not? So we know that concept of gender varies from culture to culture, varies according to socioeconomic class, level of education, and other social variable and context. So I mentioned some of the influences as parents and family members. However, children also socialize each other with their acceptance or their non-acceptance of the way a child is behaving that is either aligns with or not aligns with their perceived gender. Now, these notions are being challenged. In our society now, we're seeing non-binary gender. We're seeing different ways of identifying. We're seeing a lot more variety in our expectations of gender. And of course, this is an example of how our society constantly changes and evolves. If you ask your grandparents or great-great-grandparents about what does it mean to be a man or a woman, their responses may be very different than if you ask a peer the same question. So our societal norms and expectations change and evolve. So by extension, we've talked about social work theories. So the way that we apply theory to the concept of gender also has evolved and changed. It's an example of how we adapt to the world around us. So important takeaways about social constructionism is number one, that ideas, theories, cultural norms are not fixed. They're not truth with a capital T. These ideas and the meanings that we give them are actually created through shared knowledge about the world and the ways that we behave that are socially sanctioned according to social conventions and norms based on the shared knowledge of what we have agreed to accept as true. Number two, having a shared view about how things work helps people to live in a structured and predictable way. So how we construct ideas and how we assign meaning actually helps us to organize our world. It helps us to make sense of things and to feel like things are familiar, comfortable, and acceptable. So as human beings, we are hardwired to make meaning of the things around us. And I would also argue that we are hardwired to engage with others and share this process of making meaning. Number three, we agree about what social reality is. We form agreements about the circumstances, about what is considered to be appropriate behavior, by sharing our knowledge with other people through all sorts of social processes, through language, through actions, through behavior, through the ways that we gain approval and the ways that we seek approval as well, other methods of communicating, verbal, non-verbally, and of course, the media. So just think about the way that media and other methods of communicating have shaped our conceptions about what is beautiful for men, and especially what is beauty for women. And these ideas have spread around the world, where thin is beautiful, where light skin is beautiful, and we expect that women will look in certain ways. So, yes, these notions of beauty have been challenged. However, they're still very prevalent, and we all know what those standards of beauty are. And beauty is another example of how the idea has been socially constructed. A major critique of social constructionism is the idea of relativism. So relativism is a critique that's based on the idea that the nature of social realities is always changing. Therefore, it leads to a position where there are no certainties, and we can have no security in what we know, how we know it. So relativism leads to we can't really criticize or critique a perspective because it's based on social construction. There is no certainty, or there is no basic idea, but rather it's fluid and constantly changing. Relativism proposes that knowledge, truth, and morality exist in relation to culture, society, or historical context, and are not absolute. And it's a critique because it leads to, who's to say that one thing is right or wrong? Who's to say that something is acceptable or not acceptable? It's all relative. So it becomes fuzzy, it becomes ambiguous, and it becomes something that you can't actually quite grasp. That's a critique that's important to know, because the claims you're making, what are they in relation to? Especially if that is constantly changing and fluid. These are some quotes that I think convey what social construction is all about. Take some time and read these and reflect upon the meaning of these quotes. And finally, watch this very short YouTube clip on social construction. This may help to put some of these ideas in a more organized way and help you grasp what social construction theory is all about.